Welcome to the T4TCS podcast and YouTube channel. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and provide your feedback in terms of ideas and topics that you believe are related to T4TCS. We would like to take the time to let our viewers and listeners know that the information discussed here is not to be interpreted as a clinical approach to trauma and psychology. T4TCS was designed to provide insightful information on topics related to post-traumatic growth, finding solutions to somatic healing through a mind and body connection that works for you. It also serves as a platform for members from various communities to learn about positive effects of a trauma-informed approach to self-defense and martial arts training. And now, take the time to enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Episode 3, we've had some awesome feedback for episodes 1 and 2. The comments are awesome too. There aren't very many, but they're very positive. And we've had some discussions with some of the people that have been listening and watching. So we love the feedback that we're getting. And the consensus is that there's not really much out there that's like this. And they're enjoying they're actually, I can't remember what he said, but it's sort of, it's as if they knew that this stuff was there, but they didn't know how to express it within themselves in terms of the train for trauma and the martial arts aspect of things and applying the trauma-informed approach. But also, they didn't really know how it was going to they didn't know how it was going to flow. And when they watched and listened, it made sense. And then a lot of people, to them, they said it resonated with them. And so I like to hear that. We like to hear that because that was the idea behind starting the show and the podcast and getting together and training. The topic that we want to talk about today, though, also resonating with the trauma-informed approach coaches and stuff, and you could find a little bit more information on some of the blogs and the articles that I've written on the website, and I'll keep sharing that, is the trauma kindling side and the impact on coaches and teachers, how it could affect the relationship between the coach and the student or the teacher and the student, and then, knowing when to draw the line and setting those comfortable and healthy boundaries, but also having a professional atmosphere, right? And so we touched on it very, very little, I think, in episode 1, with respect to having to make sure that those boundaries were there and managing those boundaries and that professional relationship within the dojo and on the mats. And if you haven't read the article, please read the article about trauma kindling. But just to give a little bit of an idea on what that is so that we understand the episode as we go along here, is that if we take, for example, every little traumatic event or a perceived traumatic event that we experience as we go through life, it's like adding kindling to a fire. And so the more kindling you add to it, the more volatile that pile becomes. And eventually, when there's enough heat or there's a spark there, that kindling will light up. And so when we take on those little those perceived traumatic events, and if we don't properly process and understand what's going on, eventually we burn out. And we don't know why. And we want to continue being effective coaches, or not myself, I'm not a coach yet, but like guys like Mark and Jacob, they want to be effective coaches. But if you reach to the point where you burn out, how do you deal with it, right? So that's kind of where we want to go with this episode. And some key points to pick out here, and I'll start off with this one, is that how, like, from the years you have 2 decades, it is, right? Like 2 decades of training.
Training, yeah, and probably about 12, 12 years of really teaching programs.
Okay, so like in that 12 years, and then how many for you, sorry, as a coach?
Was a coach right now, probably eight, 9 years.
Okay, and then how many years training total?
Oh God. Um, Probably 25.
Okay, so there's a lot of training experience there, and then coaching experience. Every single so as a person who's training, you probably had a lot of confidence in the coach, right? I would assume.
As a person training, confidence in my coach.
Yeah, like sharing stories and stuff like that. Like, did that ever happen?
There were definitely some coaches where I would share certain things with.
Yeah.
But then there were one or two that I would feel like I could share everything.
Right.
So it's still very selective, just like, because some coaches you just want to go there and do what you're focused on doing, and sometimes, just like people, some people you click better with others. Now you might have a good coach he's really good at educating you in a certain art or a certain skill set. However, you're not necessarily compatible personality-wise. Like, it's not somebody you could see yourself hanging out with outside the gym.
Right.
However, they're phenomenal at what they do, and you gain a lot by working with them.
Yeah.
So you don't really you don't really get into the weeds, so to speak. Then there's other instructors, like Jacob and I share a mutual instructor and friend, where he's the type of guy you could tell him everything, and he would actually be a really good resource to kind of tell you straight out, like, hey, maybe you should get your head out of your ass, or hey, you should read this book, or, oh my God, I'm sorry that's happened to you.
Yeah.
So, so I would say it varied depending on the relationship with the specific coach.
Right. Okay. So there's the personality has to match.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and you got to have that trust with them, right? What about yourself?
No, I would agree. I think it's all about personality. It's almost like a friendship. Some people click, and they
Yeah.
become friends, and some people just don't like each other, or they're just not at that comfort level to share certain things. So I would agree. I mean, honestly, I only had one coach that I would like ever really share everything with.
Yep.
And that's the coach that Mark is talking about. Other than that, me by nature, I just don't say much. Like, I am not the kind of person that will share a lot of problems with people I don't know very well or don't trust.
Right.
Some people have almost like, when they have a problem, they need to release that energy, and sometimes it's a verbal kind of diarrhea. Not necessarily the healthiest thing, but I never really shared much with people that I didn't trust or just didn't click. Even not even a trust, but like, I just didn't consider them as someone who's the kind of friend that I could do that with. And like I said, only one coach in my entire lifetime that I ever done that with.
Okay. Yeah. Like, I mean, for me, but not on the martial arts side of things, but like either being a manager or a leader, whether it was in the field or in an office setting, wherever it was, I definitely felt as a manager, like, certain people would be comfortable coming up and talking and sharing a lot. As an employee or as somebody looking up to somebody that is higher rank, there would be certain people that you'd be comfortable sharing information with. And others, no. I wouldn't do it. You just don't, like you said, you don't have that trust. There's the dynamics not there, and and it's just not. You're going there for a professional reason, and I don't know that I want to breach that. I don't know that I want to cross that line with that person. And so, from my side of things, I know as a leader, I felt that there was a sense of confidence that I had to make sure that I maintained, and that confidentiality was extremely important so that trust would stay between me and that person all the time. Because as a leader, you still want that person to be able to come to you, so you can help them solve the problem, because there's a dual interest there. First, their well-being is an interest of mine, but at the same time, if they're well, then they're also going to be good and they're going to perform. And that's important too. So there's a double, there's two reasons for it, but the main reason for me, my main focus, where I guess, and that's where I accumulated some of that trauma kindling for myself as a leader there in the workplace, is that I cared a lot about the person, but in turn they cared a lot about me, and they were really they were good performers for me. And some of my managers above me didn't like that, because it was like, no, you need to manage this way. It was like, well, no, I can't do that. So in that aspect, in terms of being coaches for, such a long time in the martial arts community, do you meet that sort of thing with respect to your students? Like, are they, I mean, we talked about it on the last one. Some people come to you because they're bullied and they want to come in and take martial arts programs. Some people come in because they're victims of domestic violence or whatever it is. They're carrying something and they come in because the martial arts is an outlet. They're getting the outlet, but are there times there where you're dealing with the conversation piece? And what does that feel like, and how, first of all, what does that feel like as a coach?
I mean, I have a client. She's a friend. I met her. We used to work together. I'm not gonna name names, but we used to work together at this company, and we continued our friendship after I worked there, and I trained her privately. And there have been a few times where she was going through some like marital issues.
Yeah.
And she confided enough in me to tell me. It's hard because like there's a human side of you, there's the trainer side of you, and then there's the person who's just got their own stuff. And like sometimes I'm not in a mental capacity to take it.
Yeah.
Right. I always try to. I never try to tell them, what they should do, because I don't want to have that liability. I don't have all the pieces. I don't have all the information for me to just, I'm going to solve your problems.
Yeah.
But it's really, they just need somebody they trust. They need somebody they trust, that they feel that, like, who knows, maybe I'm the only person that she had that she could, because some people like to say it outside their personal circle, right? Like if you have a group of friends, you don't want necessarily everybody knowing what's going on in your life. Sometimes it's good to have that one friend that's outside your circle of friends that you can kind of go.
I never looked at it that way.
Because then it doesn't trail back. All right, but that's twofold, because sometimes you don't want to tell your instructor because you don't want to bring your shit to the gym. You go to the gym to get rid of your stress. So you don't want to trail that there and then have that now an existing dynamic where you're going to heal. However, some people do not have the same resources or a circle of friends. And so I think because based on our friendship prior to me training her, we had some type of, established trust already.
Yeah.
And then when I started to train her, it kind of gave her permission to be like, and also I'm intuitive, like when I see her not performing a certain way or not as focused on that day, I'll just be like, hey, mental check, are you good? Everything okay? And, sometimes they'll be like, yeah, I'm just a lot on my mind. And that just tells me they're working through stuff, but they don't want to share it. So at that point, my job is to just make them focus on the task at hand. But for example, if I say, hey, what's going on? You all right? And they start to tell me a little bit, I just listen. I'll give a little bit of like, for example, have you tried doing this? Have you spoken to this person about this? Have you
Just give them different options.
Yeah, I don't try to tell them the way. I just try to be a resource, and I just try to help them, because again, I need to be sure of that line that I cross, right? Like as much as I want to be her friend and help her, I can't overstep too much, because if I overstep on one, then I'm going to lose my function as the other.
Yeah.
So I'm either going to be just her friend she goes to tell her problems, or I'm just her trainer. Or I can be her trainer that kind of hears her, gives her some compassion, some sympathy, maybe a little bit of advice, and then bring her back to the task at hand so she can release that.
Right. Okay.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
I just need her to be heard. I just need that person to be heard, give them maybe some encouraging advice without getting into too much, and then try to just get that weight of hopelessness or demoralization. Just be like, oh, okay, yeah, I've been through something similar. This is how I've dealt with it. Have you considered doing this?
Right. Okay.
And just kind of touch it that way. But sometimes it's very hard, especially when they have like breakdowns.
Yeah.
And sometimes the lesson just stops. The lesson stops, and it's just a conversation, and then I let them go through what they're going through, and then that's it. I say, okay, we'll resume this at a different time, and usually they're very like, thank you. I'm like, that's fine, But at the same time, it's like we got to make sure that I don't open a can of worms, or that now I'm going to get a phone call every time. They just need to release that.
Yeah.
So there has to be like, hey, are we meeting up to talk as friends, or are we training?
Yeah.
And I just got to be very careful in that professionalism that, that we keep those two things kind of separate. Sometimes they overlap, but it's my job to like try to veer back to the training.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because at the same time, you're paying me to train you martial arts, not to be your psychologist. However, the friend and trainer in you also cares about your mental well-being, because it has to do with your performance on how you're training. So it can be complicated at times.
That can be tough to balance.
Yeah.
And that's one person.
And that's one person. And sometimes I've had that like 4 or 5 different clients, and it's a weekly thing. I'm getting updates on this person's problem and that person's problem, and I got my own problems. And then I'm at home and I'm like, I wonder how that person's doing. I wonder how that person's doing. I wonder how that person's doing. Sometimes it makes me realize how lucky I am. And sometimes like I'm with my family, but I'm not there. My mind is on this person, because I'm genuinely like, man, I wonder how they're doing. I check in on them, So it is consuming. It is sometimes draining, but it's like, you got to find that time where, like you're talking about the kindling, right? Sometimes I find myself getting too much intake from too many different people.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll just cancel classes. My private clients, I take a week off, or hey, can we reschedule? Just because I've got too much going on and I need to decompress.
Yeah.
So, but that's important, because if I don't regulate that and keep that in check, then my performance as a coach, my temper, my attentiveness, my articulation, all of that can be compromised. And then I'm not performing to what that student's paying me for.
Right. Okay. And we'll touch on that a little bit after too, like the desensitization with the relationship. Sometimes that kind of, it gets, how would I put it? It gets a bit muddy, and then it ruins the relationship over time, right? Especially if you don't keep that in check. What about yourself? Like anything, you mentioned you're also a personal trainer at some point, so you had sort of 2 aspects of the coaching side.
Yeah.
Right. So you had the martial arts coaching, and then you also had personal training. So there's
honestly,
people bringing in stuff from multiple angles there.
So I found out that in personal training, I actually heard way more problems than in martial arts. I think it's because in martial arts, when you train, I don't know if it's just because it's a little more dynamic. Maybe there's not as much time to talk, but I found that very quickly that, breaks between sets were, oh, problem time.
Okay.
And, I found that it's not just complaining about certain things or looking for advice. It's almost like there's this culture of complaining about, another set, or it's almost part of the job, which I was not aware of, because I was always very like push, let's go, give me your 100%. Where these people were 100% capable of doing everything, but it was almost like expected. Oh, I'm going to complain now. I'll do it, don't get me wrong, but I'm still going to complain because I feel like that's just part of it. But what Mark touched on, which is because I don't think I can add any more than Mark just said, because he said pretty much everything, is my capacity to listen to problems, and was very much based on what was going on in my own life. And sometimes when things were overflowing in my life, my capacity and even my tolerance Sometimes was very low, to the point that I had to cancel sometimes with the person, because I knew that person comes in for a specific reason,
Yeah.
and it was not necessarily just exercise, it was venting.
Yeah.
And most of the time, you know, if my life was in order and everything was going well, I had that stamina, that mental stamina to listen. But sometimes when, my personal life, because I mean, my life was not perfect, I was like, listen, I don't think I can handle this week. Like, this is too much.
Yeah.
Because my cup is already overflowing. So I don't think I can help you any way possible. To the point, honestly, I had to actually tell a couple of people to say, listen, I don't think I'm the best fit for you anymore, because you're not coming here for exercising anymore. I think there's a certain boundary, some invisible boundary that has been crossed,
Yeah.
and now you have this expectation that I am coming here because I need this from you instead of exercise, and that's no longer acceptable for me.
Right.
And I don't know how that boundary got crossed, because especially early when I started teaching people or training people, as a new coach, you do make certain mistakes because you come from a point of like, I really want to do a good job,
Yeah.
and I really care, and sometimes you just do too much, and certain expectations just build up, get out of control, and you're like, okay, I need to stop this now before this gets out of control even more.
Yeah. So like you said, like that invisible line or that line was crossed. Like, so how, as a coach, you want to maintain that relationship with the client. You want to be able to help them because, like you said, you do care. But how, like, what's it like to approach that and from a professional standpoint to say, look, I want to be there for you. I want to help you out, but this is not the forum to be, I understand there's going to be some venting. I understand they're coming in with their own trauma kindling and they need to do their thing, and that's why they're there sometimes. But we're like, how do you draw that line without, like, while still maintaining the professionalism and keeping that there? Like, how did you feel? Did it make you feel more stressed, or?
For me to kind of have that conversation was very stressful, because I had a massive range of reactions, from, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you feel that way, to outright, how dare you, I thought you were my friend. And no matter how I try to approach it, and I always want to approach things like that very calm, and kind of like have a civil conversation, saying, listen, I think this is a little too much. But yeah, no matter sometimes what I did was, I had a wide range of reactions. Obviously, the extreme reactions, there's very few.
Yeah.
But some people are so troubled that, no matter what I said, it didn't matter. The disappointment was there because that expectation was already there, and they almost felt betrayed by me. It was like, how dare you? I thought you were really here to help me. I'm like, first, I am not qualified to help you in any of these problems. I'm here more of to listen. But I will never, like Mark said, I would never wanted to give any advice, because I'm not qualified for certain things I heard. I was like, you need to really see someone, but it's definitely not me.
Yeah.
But it seems like sometimes these people really want to just have someone who's like, I would say maybe less intimidating. When they actually go to someone who's qualified, I'm not really sure, but maybe it just feels like this is, now they admit that, oh, this is the problem.
Yeah.
But while they're talking to me, it might not seem as such a big thing. But once they cross the line to professional help, now they have to admit, oh, this is a problem. And some people don't want to admit that this is as serious of a problem as it is.
So in terms of that, like in the relationship where it goes to that extreme, like is it something that's manageable afterwards? Like, is it like from a martial arts perspective, or even the personal training side of things? Like, is it?
It depends. Like
is it? Should you manage it afterwards? I guess, or I don't know. Like, I haven't been in that situation.
sometimes
so.
it's just like serve the ball at their end of the court, and the ball's in the court. You know, sometimes like I've had students break down crying. You know, we almost saw it today.
Yeah.
You know, and what do? Part of me wants to sit there and say, "Are you okay?" Give them a hug. You know, it's all right.
Yeah.
I'm not
But,
helping them.
Yeah, and again, with that side of things, there's an appropriate level of
Right,
of
but I'm
care
not.
there,
But,
right? So
but
yeah.
what our objective is, and here's the thing, it's important as a coach, you set a baseline of expectations prior to the training.
Yeah.
Because you definitely can't have the feeling of the goalpost always being moved and like kind of like, let's deal with this as it happens. That's a really shitty approach. You have to be like, this is what it is. This is how I deal with things. This is what my lines in the sand are. And so that when you get to that point and you react the way that you forewarn them about, they're not going to take that with that emotional attachment and like hold a grudge. They were already forewarned.
Well, they know the standard.
That's right.
The standard, right?
And that'll help
Yeah.
you negate and mitigate some of that blowback that you're talking about. I've been in a position where I've had severe anxiety because, again, if you listen to the other episodes when we talked about people who come in from bullying, people who come in with trauma, you don't know if you're the only person that person has.
Yep.
And if you discard them because you're having a shit day, that might be the only person they talk to now. And the ramifications of that, you don't want to have that on your head as a coach.
But again, that's a hard balance.
It
though,
is.
Right? Because like you said, like you want to have a standard, and the whole point of T4 TCS is to be trauma informed and having a proper approach so that we could help people, but there's still a standard we want to maintain that is and I'm not saying tradition, I'm saying standard, right? So there's a standard of professionalism we want to have and maintain that and make sure that that is carried out throughout. But there's a balance there when something like that happens. That can we unpack it after, or do we really need to deal with it now, right?
Here's where I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate though, okay? Sometimes always catering to someone's needs is not good for them.
Oh yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say this from my field.
No, I know where you're coming
Yeah.
from, but yeah, keep going.
Here's my experience, okay? I myself, our mutual instructor, yeah, I'm just gonna say his name, Joey, great instructor.
He's probably gonna watch it. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, and he'll laugh because he is the type of guy. He'll tell you the truth and nothing but the truth.
Yeah.
Okay, and I remember one time during training, he'd be like, "You all right?" You know, I'm like, and I start complaining, and I'd talk about stuff, and then we'd still be training, and he would be a friend. He would listen, but he would always make sure that we'd come back to the training, right?
Yeah.
And I remember like once, twice, maybe too many times, and we were talking, and I asked him like, what are your thoughts on this? And he's like, what do you want me to tell you? Do you want me to tell you what you want to hear, or do you want me to tell you what I think?
Okay. Yes. So.
and I looked at him. No, but listen.
But that's the thing that I tell people all the time.
These
It's like,
people are invaluable.
Yes, I'm going to be your friend that tells you what you need to hear.
Yes.
Right? Not what I think, not what you think, but I'm going to be the one that's try to be the voice of reason that we need to hear, like the information we need to hear, not the stuff we want to hear. Because sometimes it's like, I get the answer that I wanted from mom, so I'm going to go ask dad. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's exactly it. Because some people will use you for that. Because if you're just a nice guy,
right? Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just this, it's the standard. So that's what I'm saying. There has to be a standard. So Joey, he set the standard for you.
Told me straight up. He's like, "Do you want to hear what you want to hear?" And I never had. I was not expecting that from him.
Because of the conversation you had before.
Yeah, and I was just like, and I just said it like, "No, tell me the truth." And he told me straight up, like, maybe you need to work on you, bud. And it was just like, mind you, when it comes from somebody that you admire.
But that's the thing, is having the relationship and the trust with them before.
But again, so now looking back in hindsight, we had probably got to a level where he had gotten to know me. He already known that I had respect for him, held him in high regard.
Yeah.
But it's maybe he decided that he now had known me enough where now he can reciprocate the honesty.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe because Joey is such a good instructor, an experienced instructor, that, you know, I'm only understanding certain things now. And I look back now, it's like having your dad or your older brother, right? Like they tell you something when you're young,
Yeah.
and then it comes full circle, like, oh, you were doing this back then.
Yeah. I call that brain ninja shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Yeah.
And like during COVID, right? During COVID, I've told this story before. You know, even when Todd was here, I was laughing at Joey bust my balls because I started I have trauma. I have trauma from COVID, and I'm still holding on to some of it, and I had to work through it. And there was a moment during COVID that I started drinking a lot, and I got depressed because everything that I needed to heal or medicate myself physically was taken away from me, and I had no outlet.
Yeah.
And I had trained martial arts for like over 20 years, and I was gone.
Yeah.
Cold turkey. And I was working from home, and I was helping my kids in school, and then I was working out where I worked from home. I literally felt I lived in a cell. So I put on a lot of weight, like a lot of weight. Okay?
I think there's a lot of us there.
Yeah, a lot of us did, right? And then I went to train with Joey, and he just straight out looked at me, he's like, what's the matter with you? You're fat.
Oh, yeah.
Yup,
Straight like that.
that's Joey.
Because he loves me enough to be real. And in this day and age and in this social climate, that's a lost art. And although he have to be careful on what you say to who you say, Joey and I had the relationship where he knew that he knew how I was going to take that. It was half joke, but brutally honest. He knew that wasn't going to be like, you know, that wasn't going to destroy me. But at the same time, it was just like, boom. And it like was a punch in the gut. To hear him say that to me, like, what's the matter with you? What's wrong with you? What are you doing? This is somebody that has trained me for years, that I held in high regard.
Yeah.
And he just put me in my spot.
You just
It lit a fire in my ass, and it brought me back. Until this day, I joke with him. Like when I'm doing private lessons, I'm like, "How much does Joey charge you?" I'm like, "Well, a little bit less because of the mental abuse that comes with it." You know, like I get a discount for the mental abuse.
all right, maybe we need to teach him some of the trauma stuff.
Yeah, but no, but he's great, and
Yeah.
I'm telling you, like, and so that's a unique relationship.
It reminds me, you mentioned it, and this didn't even cross my mind until you said it, the way that you were approached. I think I mentioned to you guys a while ago, like before my Army days and stuff like that, like I was probably at my peak fitness. Like I was amazing. And I had a lot of support from some good friends, and one of my friends now was in my wedding. I'm still friends with him. Like he's like a brother to me. And we went to his bachelor party, and I hadn't seen him in a while, and we were doing axe throwing. This is a while ago. It's just after Charlotte was born. And I wasn't like, I was at the point where I was sort of in the middle of healing myself. Like I was going through a lot of stuff. And I hadn't worked out for like religiously for like 2 years. So when he saw me, he went and grabbed my arms. He's like, "Oh, a little squishy there, eh? What's going on there, Stay Puff?" And I'm like, "It's just dad bod." He's like, "Nah, I don't know, buddy." So, but to hear that, it's okay to hear that from him,
Yes.
right? But then it was like, he's like, "Well, you know, you always used to find time." And it's like, you're right, I did. I never made any excuses before.
They remind
And-
you who you are.
Exactly. And it's like, I didn't drink a lot when I was working out, and it's the same thing. I fell into a thing where it was like, I'm just going to come home. It was a tough day, and I'm going to have a drink. And one drink became 2,
Yeah.
and then 3.
Yep.
And it was like, that was the thing. And then you do that for 2 years and don't work out religiously,
Different person.
it gets to you, right? So, but then when they saw me, it was like, what's going on there, man? I'm like, you're not the same guy I met, or I know. So it's the hard truth.
It is.
And it doesn't come from a bad place, right? Because you have that trust and that relationship with them. Like, I don't know what yours was like, or like.
Oh no, I mean, Joey.
Yeah,
the
'cause
number
you
of
guys come
times
from
I
the
would
same
call
cloth,
fat.
right? So,
If I had $1 for every time. honestly, that kind of approach mixes with my personality
Yeah.
because sometimes I'll just build this scenario in my head where, the excuses are very legitimate. And then it takes someone like Joey to just like, because it's like literally a wall made out of glass. And he takes this tiny little hammer, goes, and the whole thing just breaks. And I'm like, shit, I am fat. Where I built all these excuses. Oh, my knee is not 100%. My shoulder really hurts. And I'm really busy at work.
Yeah.
Okay, so do 20 minutes a day and don't eat so much. Simple
Yeah.
solution, right? But if you're good in fooling yourself, you fool yourself perfectly.
It's the rationalization.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes that goes into our behavior towards somebody else.
Yeah.
Right? It reminds me too is that I think, I can't remember if it was you that sent me the video. I can't remember the name of the video, but it brings me to the next point. We're talking about like we want to have a standard, so there's a reasonable standard that the dojo needs to have, so that everybody expects that. So there's no surprises when we're trying to push performers, right? Like when people are feeling tired, no, let's go, keep going, right? You're gonna go, and you say it in a joking way, but you're still serious. It's like, I don't have feelings for you if you're not going to try.
Yeah.
Right? Like you gotta keep moving. And it was like kind of like that when I was in the military too. And that kind of it was. Like you had to perform. But the video that was sent yesterday, it was you weren't the only one that sent it to me, and it was really cool because it resonated with me in terms of they had that tradition in smacking and whipping people with the belts when they earned the new belt, right?
Jiu-jitsu, yeah.
In the jiu-jitsu place, and I can't remember it, and I'm not going to name it either because I don't want to call it out. But what I took away from that, and it was really powerful too, is that it was a tradition for a lot of the people that were there, and where that the new dojo owner, where he came from, that's what they did. Whenever they earned the belt, they went through the line and they got whipped by everybody that was going through, and the one student chose not to, and the sensei, not in a bad way, just went up and said, "Hey, what's up?" And he explained it to him. He says, like it just brought me back. It was a trigger for me from my childhood, and I just didn't feel right doing it. But the words from the sensei to me were like, it resonated, and they were powerful because he said, I didn't realize that it would do that. It was a tradition from where I came from that I wanted to carry over when I started my new place. I had no idea that that's what it would do. So maybe the tradition isn't the way to do it anymore. Right? Maybe it's something that we need to consider even if we do carry on, that not everybody's going to want to take part.
That's it.
Right? So there's certain times where we need to be able to recognize that. I think that's a valuable thing.
Yep.
Right? Because it goes back even to the training. Like, what if I put a chokehold or a rear naked choke on somebody that's how they were traumatized? What if that's how they were taken down in an event, right? And if that's the first thing they get introduced to when they come into a place, that's going to be a tough thing.
But at the same time, it's like it's not up to the coach always to guess.
No, but that has to be open, right?
That's right. And that's what it comes down to, is that communication, right?
The conversation needs to be there, but sometimes the person's not always going to be willing to share it, right? So it's a weird dichotomy to balance. It's strange, right? Because coaches come in with their own, the students come in with their own, but if nobody talks, nobody's going to know.
And that's where it comes back to some of the things that we spoke about. I can't remember which episode, but looking at that body language.
Yeah.
Looking at that body language, looking how they react, looking if they feel timid, looking if they feel relaxed. And then if you're smart enough to pick that up, or you have the training to kind of see that, that's when you can kind of walk over and say, "Hey, listen, is there something about what we're doing that making you uncomfortable?" Yes, there is. Would you care to share what that is? Because it can help me maybe reformat how I relay this information to you.
Yeah.
Right? Or is there somebody in here that you possibly might feel comfortable, or is there somebody you want to come bring with you to train that you've had them comfortable doing it to you, right? Again, this is why it's so important, because you want to be informed, you want to be trained, you want to be able to spot these things and help these people. But at the same time, coaches aren't mind readers.
No.
They're not psychics. they're human beings with their own things attached to them that they have to deal with while still spreading themselves out to a class of how many people. So anybody out there who is looking to get some healing, get some training, but have some things that you're holding on to, maybe seek out that training when you're at least comfortable admitting that there are some things that you have to work through while training, but make that instructor aware of it, because you could actually potentially give yourself more trauma.
That's true.
And then
yeah.
unintentionally, you might give that instructor a complex, because nobody thinks about that either. Like an instructor has no, it could be a really good instructor, but maybe it's their second year being a teacher. They're learning as they go too. They're working their craft. Right? And now they have an experience where, they're teaching and somebody has a meltdown or a breakdown or has a response. They don't have the training for that. And maybe that experience itself traumatizes that instructor, and now makes that person think, maybe I'm not a good teacher. Maybe I shouldn't teach.
Yeah, okay. I can see where that comes from too.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, yeah.
So there really has to be.
They don't feel effective, and they're like, okay, did I do something wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I say something
Yeah.
wrong?
And what if something happens where that student later on does something to themselves or to somebody else?
Mm.
And now that person's going to have that on them, like, was that because of me? Right? It's just ripples in the pond, and we got to really be careful of the impacts we make on each other, but we should expect an instructor to be professional, but professional in his field, and you are going to be disappointed less by people if you don't expect things from them that you shouldn't expect.
Well, again, it's managing the expectations right at the
And that's huge.
Yeah. So what happens, I don't know if it's ever happened, maybe. It's reasonable to understand, for me to think anyways that it would, but like, what happens in terms of it, like, I want to question this right or choose the right words, like the relationship and the empathetic desensitization. So, I mean, I admit I've had it. There's certain people, as a leader, they come to you, and like you said, sometimes they've made it the platform where that is their venting tool. And it's like, to me, as a leader or a manager, this is okay. I still want that for you, but this is getting too much. And I feel like this has crossed the boundary in our professional relationship, but also it's sort of it's put a stop to anything for it to go past this. I can't. It should. How would I put it? It shouldn't control my bias, but it's at the point where it has gotten into. It's gotten to a threshold in the relationship where I can't see past the rest of the stuff, because first of all, I'm dealing with mine. But also, I want to be a leader. I want to help you, but there's only so much I can do. And if you're not taking that, not so much just my advice, but if you're not actually making the decisions, it's tough to continue on, because you can kind of see the regression in that individual or that group of people, and you still want to keep going. So, we're all about helping people. We want to do it, but how does that work with the coaching relationship? Like, how far has it gotten to that point where it's irreparable, and you kind of just have to say, this is not for us. Maybe find somewhere else to go. Like, has it gotten there before?
I've had that experience.
Yeah.
I've had that experience.
The martial arts, no, and fitness, yeah.
Yeah.
The 100%. So
I don't know if I explained that right, but that's
No,
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 I get exactly what
yeah.
you're saying.
sometimes you either recommend that person to somebody else. Say, I think this coach is better. Sometimes it's a shit show, and then you never see them again. And sometimes it's time kind of heals certain things, and then they come back after like a month, and kind of process everything slowly by themselves,
Yeah.
realizing, hey, I did push too hard, and I had unreasonable expectations, and I apologize. And then sometimes you restart and it works, and sometimes you restart and it's good for a month, and then it's
Back to the same thing.
back to the same. And at that point, you gotta say, listen, you're going in a circle, and this is not healthy for both of us. Because every time this happens, this affects me too. Maybe when something like that happens, you know, I go home, I'm a little bit agitated, and then even things that would never set me off sets me off.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this affects my family, and if that happens, then for me, if it affects my family, it's a hard stop. I never cross that line. If I see that this was happening, you need to go.
Yeah. And yeah, I can see how that would be tough too, especially if you truly do want to be that person that wants to help.
I've had it also an instructor be like, when I was talking about my problems, they pull out their phone, put a timer on, put the phone down, and says, that's how much time you have to complain. After that, I don't want to hear anything anymore. Go.
Yeah.
Well, I never had that.
Go. But no, but here's the thing though, right?
But that's the thing. You're there for training for martial arts, right?
Right, but see, sometimes they go hand in hand, right? Because in order for you to release that tiger or that aggressiveness, right? You have to overcome that timidness. And sometimes you only get over that timidness. You can only help them get over that when you understand the root of it.
So talking.
Talking sometimes, but
Yeah.
talking through work. Talking through work and just talking are two different things,
Yeah.
right? Like if somebody's telling me, a tidbit of what they're going through or something that really pissed them off in between their rest round, and we're just having a conversation, and I'm giving him my experience of what I went through. Oh, that's something similar happened to me like that. Okay, go, time. And they're going back and they're doing their thing and they're getting it out, because sometimes when we're talking about it, it's bringing up those emotions, and then they're actually using it as fuel.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Then you get the somatic experience.
There you go,
Yeah.
right? But it's the person that comes back, and like Jacob touched on before, they're not there. They're there as a therapy session, as a coddling session. And so it's like they're stuck in this repetitive loop where it's like punch in, punch out. I come, I bitch, I come, I leave, right? And now it's like the instructor now has to decide, am I just going to listen to this and make my money? Am I going to try to help him?
Yeah.
Or am I going to send him away? And it's like, and that's why I brought up with Joey is like, what do you want to hear? Do you want to hear what you want to hear, or do you want to hear what I got to tell you? Because it's going to get to the point where it's like, okay, listen, if I want to help you, what's your problem? Okay, great. What are you going to do about it? What are we going to do about it today?
Yeah. What can I do in this
That's
setting
right.
for you?
Now we have objectives. Now we're tying it back to the martial or somatic training or the physical conditioning or the release of stress, all that stuff, all the good stuff, right? But if it's just like, oh yeah, well that sucks. All right, let's get back to work. And then they get back to work a little bit. Yeah, but then this person did this, and it really like, I'm not training you now.
Yeah.
This is not a martial arts training. This is where I can say, hey, I have a colleague named Eric. He'd be really great for you to talk to. Maybe he goes and has a session talking with you. And then when he releases that, then he can come back and bounce back to a guy like me and Jacob.
Yeah.
We're going to help him work through that training, right? But we don't know sometimes what they want. Sometimes they don't know what they want. Sometimes I'll have a guy come in and want to do this kind of art, and then he wants to do something else.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes people come in and they don't want to fight. They just want to get a workout. Sometimes they don't want to work out. They want to fight. But the thing is as the instructor, I got to watch what this person really wants. And if they just want to talk, and then come back again and talk and come, because if there's talk and there's no talks about resolution or overcoming or fixing or anything other than just keep regurgitating the same shit, then I'm not helping you. And in fact, I'm now damaging myself.
Yeah. Well, it's not that you're not helping you. It's just, I can't help you, right? Because we're not coming up with a solution.
Right, but I'm also creating a space for him to just revisit bullshit.
Yeah.
That's gonna just affect him more because now they're stuck in this loop of this mindset that's just dwelling in this whatever they're feeling. And by constantly contemplate, like there was a new study. I'll see if I can find a link to it. Maybe we can attach it to this. But there was a
Yeah.
study about how, and it was spoken on Joe Rogan too. Actually, the lady who wrote the book. But she was saying the more sometimes that people talk about their psychological problems, they actually they're dwelling.
It becomes a living experience.
That's
Yes.
right. They
Yeah.
dwell with it, and then the
Yeah.
more that we say that, like death and life is in the tongue, right? The more that they talk about it, they actually keep their mindset in that moment, and that brings the physical responses that come with it. So you're perpetuating your own depression or your own anger, your own anxiety.
But that's what we talk about in terms of the stigma, right? It's a cycle. Like if we just don't, and again, storing the bad energy, not dealing with it, it just becomes this repetitive cycle because those coping mechanisms, that rationalization, that negative self-talk, all of that stuff is just a vicious circle,
Right.
right? So I like what you mentioned about that in terms of it's like, okay, well, what is it you want? Right? Like you said, like what Joey was saying, okay, what can I do? Right? What am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Because we're here and there's only so, like, this is the way I'm seeing it anyways. We're here in the dojo. We're here in the training center. This is what I can do for you. Right? Maybe that day is not it. And like you said, maybe it's, okay, let's go have a conversation with Eric or Carl or whatever it is. Maybe that's going to be the trigger.
Yep.
And maybe that's going to be the point at which where all that stress is going to come out and then they're going to be ready for it. Maybe the first day in the dojo is going to be the one that's like, well, that's going to be the one that sets them off. Maybe they have to go have a talk then, after that, and then they're set. But it brought me to something that I thought of when I was in the military. We heard is like, if you can come to me with an issue, if you're coming to me with an issue, be prepared to come to me with 3 or 4 solutions before we have the conversation. Otherwise, you're just whining.
That's right.
And I know that sounds crass, but it's true, right? And I say that because of like we're all talking about being trauma informed and stuff like that. And again, it sounds crass, but it's kind of true. It's that negative self-talk. So if I'm going to come up to somebody with problems all of the time, but not be willing to come up with a solution before or even discuss a solution if it comes up, then what am I doing? Maybe it is having a conversation with somebody else on a different level first to kind of get that forward-facing, that maybe get that post-traumatic growth growing from conversation before going into to the dojo.
Yeah, it's also habit too, because it's going to bleed into the personal life, right? Because if Jacob invites you out for drinks,
And all we do is
and
pout at
he's
the
like,
bar?
yeah, can I bring Mark? You guys are having a great time, and I show up and I'm like, oh man, blah 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 blah. That's a damper. That's a downer. And honestly, nobody wants that shit. Nobody cares for that because guess what? Everybody's stressed as it is. When people go out, they want to go out to get away from their problems. It's supposed to be that temporary time where they just laugh with their friend, you know, maybe bust each other's chops a little bit, get a breath of fresh air, and then they can go home and at least they have that, oh, okay, I'm ready to go back to deal with this. This person who's stuck in this loop or this cycle, it's not just going to be at the you know, probably going to be at the gym. It's going to be in every aspect of their social life. It's going to be at work. He's going to complain about work. He's going to complain about this person at work. Oh, this person always picks on me. Oh, this person's this. Oh, why are they always on me about this? And then they're going to go out with their friends. Oh, why isn't that person like me? Why didn't that person talk to me? Why blah, 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 blah. They're going to look for that every aspect of their life because that's what they're programmed to do. And so sometimes having that person be like, what are you going to do about it? Could be the only thing, I mean, as harsh as it could be sometimes, but it could be the one thing that means like, oh, okay, I'm not going to get the attention I want by always doing this because nobody's going to want to hear it. So maybe I got to change.
Yeah, but it could be like you said. It could be like, I don't know, and maybe I'm playing the devil's advocate, but it could be like that could be the one thing that they're looking for, and they need something, right? Right. So there's there's a lot to it,
Yeah, there
right?
is.
With that, but again, that cycle of that negative self-talk and all of that other stuff, it's deadly.
It is.
It truly is, because they could be on the borderline, and I teach this stuff too, is like the suicide, right?
Right.
It could be it. It could be the straw that broke the camel's back for them. It could, that to them, that could be the kindling they're carrying. But again, how can we help them solve that problem?
And
But coaches, like you said right at the beginning of what we started here, coaches and teachers, that's not the goal. And you take all that,
yeah.
right? And that's the absorption there. So it's knowing how to deal with it and how to, this is not for me.
Yeah, it's
Right.
what's your bandwidth?
Yeah,
I think it's also timing. Timing in a situation like that is very important.
that is crucial too.
Right? I mean, if you establish this precedent that, hey, you're coming here and I will listen to everything you say for, for the entire hour, and I won't do
Or the
anything about
timer.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly. But, you allow that person to do that for a certain amount of time. And then all of a sudden you say, oh, well, that's it. I can't deal with this anymore. Because the timing is, you allowed it for so long, instead of, first or second time saying, listen, what are you going to do about it? You potentially expose that person and yourself to an extra trauma, because now that person kind of built that connection of, oh, he listens to me, he really cares. And then when it starts overflowing, say, listen, I don't think I can do this anymore. All of a sudden that person's like, oh, well, you broke my trust. I
This
thought you were my
happens to me all
friend.
the time.
Exactly.
And,
And all of a sudden you got you build another trauma on top of the trauma you already had. So I think with situations like that, you kind of have to establish those boundaries very quickly, so you don't get yourself in trouble. Because, like you said, this person potentially could be suicidal, and when you have that talk after a prolonged, time of like letting them really vent, that night they might feel so betrayed that they might do something.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Again, but again, like Jacob's saying, like this is the fear that I'm saying about some instructors that might have who have less experience, right? But again, it's like you have to know your client. You get to know your client, right? And it's like if I know a client and I've known him for years, and I see him all of a sudden be out of character and go from one polar up extreme to the other, I know that there is something really happening that's shook him to the core. This guy needs some real help. So if he opens up to me and talks to me, of course I'm going to be compassionate and listen to him, but I'm not going to be the guy that's, oh, I'm going to solve your problems.
Yeah,
You need to refer them to somebody.
that's right. Yeah.
And then you can follow up on him. And if this person was not his habit before, his nature, let's say, he's not going to want to dwell in it. He's going to want to get back to a place where he feels like himself again. Some people have mental disorders where they take solace in being in that dark place. And we need to be careful not to be suckered into enabling that. Again, that's not something that's just revealed overnight. So that's what I'm saying. Like the whole dynamic here is, it's like context, right? Like, how well do I know this person? What's the relationship? Because if I know somebody not well and I see that they're doing this right away, I'm going to be compassionate and polite about it. But then I also might say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm booked. I can't do it. Because I already know that this is coming with a whole different set of circumstances that I might not be prepared for, nor do I want, or might not have the bandwidth in my time right now, emotionally, right?
But that's how have the self-awareness of it, though,
You have to.
right? So that's the important part, is having the self-awareness, the emotional intelligence to say, nope, not for me.
Listen to your gut.
Yeah.
Listen to your gut.
And sometimes you have to say to yourself that no matter what I could have done, there was no solution to this. Because like Mark said, sometimes if something happens, it weighs really hard on the coach, because you ask yourself these questions. I could have done this, I could have done that. But you also have to realize sometimes that that person was already far too gone. And no matter what you did, you might have, this might have not changed anything.
Yeah.
Right? Then that's where the timing comes in, because some people come in, when they're just had that traumatic experience. Some people had it for 2 years. Some people for 10 years, and weighs on them completely different.
Yep.
And one thing that you say to a person might have a completely different reaction to another person, and they might be the polar opposite, right? And as like Mark said, we're not really qualified for this. We're coaches. We're not doctors. We're not psychologists. We can refer these people to saying, listen, I think you have a problem. You should go see somebody. But at that time, when this is happening, sometimes it's like, listen, it doesn't matter what I would have said. The ball was really rolling, and there was no stopping it.
Yeah. So like to me, so I'm getting it all right, like, or if I'm getting it correctly, so we have to have those professional standards first of all.
Yes.
Ensure that we communicate openly what those standards are, what the expectations are. We're here for this class. This is what we're doing. I'm still a coach. I'm still a human. I'll listen. I'll take time. But this is what we're here for. And this is what we're doing. If we need the extra help, here's somebody I can refer you to. When we're going through that, like, so what are some of the examples of, let's say, for example, like you guys have already mentioned that you went through some of this stuff. What was some of the stuff that you did for yourself in terms of that self-care when you realized this was getting a bit too much? Like you mentioned, you said, okay, I'm canceling clients for a week, right?
Yeah.
This is just it. This is what I got to do. Like, what are some of the other methods that kind of, like, do you still go, do you say, hey, I've had enough training in terms of being a coach, I'm going to go and hit the bags with somebody else now? Like, is there, sometimes do you go and do that? Because
Yeah.
I've only ever known you as a person that's been training me,
Yeah.
right? And same with you. Like, I haven't, like, do you guys, what is your venting? Like, how did you, like,
My venting.
you guys are constantly coaching us.
Yeah, my venting is.
So do you get to hit the bags?
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
So
I will hit the bag, or I will go. One of the things I love to do, by far, is I hook up my dogs to my bike, and I run them. And they pull my bike, and we go like 10, 12 kilometers. I have my headset on, and I'm just, I lose all my thoughts. I just enjoy, see my dogs run, be happy. I run them to like the beach. When I get to the beach, I let them loose. They run around, they swim, they do their thing. And while I'm there, it's just me and the waves, and I'll shadow box, I'll carenza, I'll meditate, I'll pray. It's just my alone time.
yeah,
And it's my reflection. And one thing I always make sure I do is I ask myself 3 questions, and I said that I genuinely try to help that person the best of my ability. Did you treat this person, did you try to make their interaction with you beneficial? And are you the right person, coach or whatever for that person? Are you providing them a service? And if I can't answer yes to all of those, or I'm questionable, then I have to really reflect further. Or maybe it's a matter of your heart's in the right place, but you might need some more skills. And so, okay, what do I, because once I know what my problem is, now I can start to formulate a way to solve it, to, address it. Because if you don't know what your problem is, if you don't know what it is you're doing, you're going to get stuck in that loop.
Yeah.
You're expending energy for nothing.
And circling the proverbial toilet
Right?
drain, yeah.
So that's my mental way that I do with it. And then there's sometimes where I'm at home, and sometimes it's very vigorous. I put on music, and I smash the bag for a bit. And then I come up with stuff, and then I'll think about it, and I'll document it, I'll write it down, I'll try it out, and then and then it becomes me releasing stuff to now me coming up with a bunch of stuff that's going to keep me mentally focused on sharpening skills.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's something as simple as just playing on the double-ended bag while watching classic fights. You know, it kind of depends, right? Because sometimes there's like stress from responsibility, emotional stress of anger, or mental fatigue and being drained.
Yeah.
And depending on which one I'm going through, I'm gonna have my own process of dealing with that, right? But definitely, I have to get my own training in because, you know, yeah, it's fun to teach, it's fun to do it, but Jacob and I are martial artists first,
Yeah.
and we're lifers. You know, if we're not getting our own dose, we start getting out of sorts. And if we're out of sorts, there's no way that we're going to be able to coach and now deal with people who potentially bring this stuff.
Yeah.
So I think there's much more to teaching and coaching than I think students understand who have never had that yet. And especially for training fighters, because the stress before they fight of their safety, are they prepared? Did I do everything that I should have?
Their psychological well-being
Yeah,
before going in.
yeah. What's their mental state? Have I given them all the tools? Am I blowing smoke up their ass? Was I being too kind with them? Was I being, you know, was I thorough? Is my knowledge enough?
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot to that. Their win is your win. Their loss is your loss. You know, and it is stressful. It really is stressful, but it's so rewarding. It really is. Like,
Yeah.
when you see a student feel like a sense of accomplishment after doing something that they've been going through in the gym, and you've been yelling at them and barking at them and let's go, let's go, let's go, and they finally do it, and you see that joy, that pride in their face, that's huge. You just watch somebody step out of their shell and become something else. And to be a person that helped encourage that to happen, for me, that is legacy. That is like, when I die, nobody's gonna care what I had in my bank account. But when people go up and greet my daughter at my casket and be like, hey, your father was a good man and he helped me do this,
Yeah.
that's what I'm banking on. You know?
Yeah. For the record, I'm gonna have mine sitting straight up and my hand is gonna be out. That's how I'm gonna be done.
Take a picture?
So they have to. Right at the front door. Gotta get that 5 before I get in there.
It gets you stuffed.
That's how I'm getting stuffed. So anyways, what about you? Like, what?
Back
I know
in the
you work
day,
out. We talk about working out and stuff like that, but
yeah.
like,
So yeah, obviously loading by just physical exertion. Back in the day when my knees were still good, I just used to go for a run, and no music, no nothing. I would just let my mind flow to wherever it wants to. Kind of like I felt like my mind is gonna find its own way to deload. And honestly, a lot of times I would do 10K, and there wasn't really much going through my mind. It's almost like my mind was healing itself or just resting, and just give me enough stimulus that I can actually put one leg in front of the other. And I found that very therapeutic. But when I was really under a lot of stress, because I'm a photographer by trade,
yep.
I would just grab a camera and go to the city and just try to find beauty in the ugliness of the city. And just by looking for that, my mind would just switch into a positive mindset, simply because I would just look for, I mean, downtown Toronto it has a beautiful places, but most of it is just concrete, and it's not really the most beautiful,
They've got some cool
Yeah.
landmarks and stuff like that, and some cool settings, but yeah.
Yeah, so I would just walk around, and sometimes I would just people watch. Like I would feel like my eyes would draw me to certain things, human interactions. When I find at the time of that kind of stress, my eyes would always find the positive interactions. It's almost like my mind knew by itself somehow unconsciously that this is what I need to see.
Mm-hmm.
And it would just seek out these things unconsciously, and on top of that, I would come back with like a whole bunch of beautiful urban pictures, and for me, that was probably the best therapy when I was under the most stress, when I felt like I'm really burned out because, of whatever happened.
Yeah, I never thought of that, actually. The photography side of things, I never thought of that.
I like how you said about having your mind switch to looking for the positive or the beautiful things. I think that's pretty profound. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it would just happen automatically because I would just, I was obviously, photography wise, I was looking for something beautiful to shoot. But people interactions, like just random things I've seen, it seems like my mind just would just always look for the positive ones and completely ignore the negative ones.
Hmm.
And
Huh.
I don't know if there's some kind of a woo-woo stuff in there, or maybe just a good energy, or is it something that was just sent to me because that's what I needed? Hard to say. You can't back that up with science.
You're retraining your brain
Yeah.
to think in a different.
Because you're now looking for something different other than the
Yeah.
yeah.
Plus, also, it's just honestly detachment from the gym because it was such a different environment
Yeah. I can see
that
that too.
they kind of like my mind just rest because I'll put myself in a completely different environment, and just that rest. Sometimes I would come back and within like 2-3 hours, I would feel so amazing. I know, and when I left, I was like devastated. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually pretty wicked. I never thought of that. Like for me, in the time, the darker period that I was explaining before, the furniture that you see here, that's what I did. I
Yeah,
just grabbed scrap. Like, believe it or not, this is all scrap stuff that I just picked up.
Yeah, no.
And it was in the shop that we were working with, and just picked up scrap stuff out of the bin and I drew stuff on a piece of paper, and I was like, I want to make this. And sometimes I didn't even draw anything. I just grabbed it and started cutting and measuring and putting it together. I was like, I'm gonna make a table. Just fucking do it. And this one here, I was at my darkest moment.
I think it's the form of creation.
Yeah.
well, that's back to that somatic healing,
Yeah.
right? It's like
It's the fine motor
because I
skills.
draw, I sculpt and stuff too, and I used to do that stuff. That was my way I used to heal or cope when I was younger. Martial arts became my life. I still draw and stuff like that once in a while. I have to really be in the mood for it. But just reading about it, it's like, yeah, you either sculpt, you build, you photography. It's in the doing. Because once we're doing something, we're focusing our brain to focus on that new objective. When it's just left to itself for its own demise, it just like migrates back to the negative or to the.
Yeah.
So I just find that's really amazing how sculpting, painting, drawing, photography, martial arts, just practicing any craft really
Yeah.
is able to do that.
That's cool. I didn't know that. It's just one of those things I just wanted to find out, and it was part of what I wanted to talk about here too. Is the self-care portion from a coach thing. So we kind of went off. I think we stayed on topic, but we went on a bit of a rant. Actually, I wouldn't even call that.
Derailment.
It was a good discussion. um, so yeah, I think from where I'm looking at it from my perspective and where we can do some real good is just recognizing from a coaching perspective, I'm not there yet. Just overall, the atmosphere is just making sure the atmosphere is an open and welcoming one. The standards are communicated right out the gate. Like most dojos and places will have their code of
creeds,
ethics
yeah.
or their whatever it is that they have that you have to agree to before you get there. But not just reading the piece of paper though, just having a conversation saying, look, this is what I'm here for. And I think we talked about it right in the first episode too, is knowing what that person is going to be training for and what they're there for. What is their objective? Why are you here? That's an important piece to understand. Keep the conversation open. Make sure we're empathetic and we're, again, trauma informed, and if we can. But we have to draw the line. The expectation needs to be managed. And if we can't help in that regard, then we're going to refer you to somebody else.
Absolutely.
So that we can better manage and mitigate against the risks, but kind of move away from, again, that video that I was talking about that I'm pretty sure it was you that shared it.
Yep.
Tradition's important. I think it is. But in that tradition, recognizing that thing can be a trigger for somebody.
Yep.
And if it is, it doesn't mean you have to move away from it. Sometimes you can, and that's the choice that they make. But maybe you can make an exception for that person because of
Absolutely.
what's happening,
Absolutely.
right? So we are in a weird time, and everybody's carrying something, and not a lot of people want to talk about it. So being open to hearing somebody say something or listening for, like you said, watching the body language, listening for the cues, understanding maybe there's a different approach to the conversation, I think that's huge.
Yeah.
So I guess to me, that's the takeaway from the topic of the discussion for tonight.
Yep.
And
Yep.
just keep the mind open, right? Because if we don't keep the conversation going, we don't keep our minds open to what somebody else might be going through, we can get ourselves into some more trouble. Not just us, that person. And I don't want to sound ominous, or again, I used the term last time, the prophet of doom, but sometimes we might dwell on whether or not that person's unfortunate decision was our fault.
Yeah.
Right? And like you said, did I do the right thing? All of this stuff, but we have to recognize that not everything is within our control.
Yeah. And
So
I just want to add one thing too. Is like, if you're just a fellow student in the class or something like that, and you are aware that somebody has some demons that they're battling, you could make a difference also by reaffirming any progress you see that person doing in class. If they're not there for a class and they come back the next day, just something as simple as, "Hey man, seeing you. Missed you last class. How you doing?" That person now feels like, if they were that person that's always being negative, now they have a positive thing like, "Oh, I was missed. Oh, this person remembers my name." And maybe that will then try to trigger stuff like how Jacob was talking about, looking for the positive instead of the negative. Because we never know, one simple smile, one simple, "Hey, how you doing?" From people you don't expect it from, it could really change your perception. It could change your day. And then they might starve for that. And that could be the beginning of the reprogramming.
yeah, you just made me think too. This is way back. I had not gone to the gym for a long time in that time period, and when I went back, I saw the same guy I used to work out with. It was like 2 years. He's like, "Holy shit, man, it's good to see you back." And I'm like, "Yeah, I was going through some tough stuff, and it was pretty hard. I just finally had the courage to come back." And he's like, "Well, I'm happy you're here." And I was like I wanted to cry in front of him.
Yeah.
I was like, that made my day.
Yep.
But it's also a story that I talk about, a funnier story, when I teach the suicide stuff, because I used to be, just before that, when I was trying to figure things out, I'd be with friends or something like that, and I'd just randomly wave at people in a car. They're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know, it might change their day." Like, what if that person in the car they don't know who I am, but if I'm smiling with my teeth grinning and I'm just waving at them, they either A, might get super upset, or they're going to laugh their ass off.
Or wave back.
Or wave back, right?
Yep.
But either way, it's going to change the course of their day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So anything that you can do, like Mark said, it's good to see you, right?
That's it.
Haven't seen you in a bit. It's good to see you. I'm happy you're back, right? And even the progress through the class, if there's some frustration. "Hey, man, you worked really well on this. Keep that up," right?
Yep.
Success breeds success,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Coaches need to be critical, but good coaches will recognize the success and they will praise on that and they will capitalize on success. And I say good coaches. Good coaches will do that. And I think you mentioned it before too. You don't want to be overly critical with certain things.
Nope.
Because then you're just going to push the person away, right? It's just, I think of it as a parent. It's the same thing.
Yep.
Right? So, cool.
Yeah, that's right.
Any final words?
I mean, it's such a tough subject because,
Oh yeah, we can talk. There's what ifs that we can go down. We can go down the rabbit hole.
You know, I would say, as a coach, like Mark said, ask yourself, yeah, like, have I done everything that I could have within my power?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if the answer is yes, then you really have to stop running that guilt trip, no matter what happened, because, like you said, sometimes things are out of your control, and you just have to let it go. And I know it's not easy, so if you need to go see someone,
Yep.
uh,
And that's what I'm here for, everybody. So
exactly. And so I would say, as long as the question to the answer is yes, um, you you should really.
it's reasonable.
It is
Yeah.
very, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you should really not guilt yourself, because you really did everything you could,
Yeah.
and it was just out of your control. That doesn't mean that it's not gonna cause problems down the line, but I think it's gonna release some of that pressure.
And it's not going to bring us into the negative self-talk.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's good. Mark?
For me, it's just understand your bandwidth. If you are feeling fatigued, if you are currently dealing with any emotional or personal issues at home or anything like that, be very cautious on who your client is. Uh, you know, if I'm already mentally stressed, I probably won't have that client who's gonna unload his psychological affairs on me.
Yeah.
Because that's not gonna be the good day for it. Just like if I have an injury in my arms, I'm probably gonna reschedule a 230-pound guy that hits like a mule.
That'd be a smart thing to do.
So it's like, it's just, I just take a, be aware of where your mental is at, where your physical is at, and if you're just too tired, if you just can't, you're not up for it, don't just be like, but I need the money, because you could damage somebody else, and you can potentially ruin that client's experience, which will then cost you more in the long term. So just be aware of where you're at.
Good points. And again, we come back to, it's not always about the money.
No.
Yep. It's about good experiences.
And then the clients will be a byproduct of the experience. So.
Yep.
Right on. Cool. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode. Hope you liked it. Leave comments if you guys want to know more and you guys want to talk about something. Hey, if you guys have a subject that you guys want to chat about, leave it in the comments section, or just send us each one of us a message and let us know. We're happy to talk it and figure it out and maybe have you on and talk about it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Cheers.